An elderly woman, frail and worn out, approached a millionaire and asked for just $1. What happened next was simply unbelievable. Get ready for a heartfelt story full of twists that will touch your heart. It was a scorching day, and the sun was blazing down on the crowded city streets. People rushed by, caught up in their own problems, too busy to look around. In the midst of that bustling crowd, there was an old woman in tattered clothes, walking slowly with tired steps. Her face, marked by age and sorrow, showed signs of exhaustion and defeat. She stopped on the sidewalk, watching the passers-by, her eyes searching for someone who might help her. She only needed $1 to satisfy the hunger that had been gnawing at her for days. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage to approach a well-dressed man getting out of a fancy car. He looked important, maybe a businessman, someone who probably never knew what it was like to need help. "Excuse me, sir, could you spare $1?" Her voice was low, almost a whisper, as if she was afraid of being turned down. The millionaire, a tall black man with a commanding presence, paused. He had been approached by beggars many times before, but something about this woman made him hesitate. Their eyes met, and he felt something stir in his chest. Those eyes carried a deep pain, a story untold. He furrowed his brows, and instead of just taking out his wallet and handing her the money, he asked, "Why do you need this $1?" The woman lowered her head, embarrassed, and her voice trembled as she replied, "I just wanted to buy something to eat. I'm hungry." The millionaire felt a knot in his throat. It wasn't a request born out of addiction. It wasn't a trick or an excuse. It was just hunger, very simple, very human. But that woman couldn't satisfy it. He swallowed hard, feeling a mix of pity and anger. How could someone get to this point? For a moment, he stayed silent, watching the elderly woman more closely. Her thin body, her trembling hands, her dirty clothes. He realized she wasn't just another beggar. She was someone who had a different life. At that moment, before he handed her the $1, he wanted to know her story. He needed to understand how she ended up here, because something inside him was telling him that her story deserved to be heard. The millionaire took a deep breath and looked at the elderly woman seriously. He could have easily given her the money and gone on with his life, but something inside him wouldn't let him do that. That lost look in her eyes, that humble request, it made him want to know more. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The elderly woman hesitated for a moment before replying, "Helena." The millionaire nodded. "Hey, Helena, can I ask you something? How did you end up here? What happened in your life that made you have to ask for $1 just to eat?" Her eyes filled with tears. It was rare for anyone to care about her story. Usually, people would look away, pretend she wasn't there, or just toss some coins away before moving on. But this guy was different. He was actually looking at her, waiting to hear her story. Helena swallowed hard and started to speak. "I haven't always lived like this. I used to have a home, a family. I was married for many years and had kids. But after my husband passed away, everything changed." She took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. Those memories were really painful. The millionaire stayed silent, respecting her space. "My kids at the time stopped reaching out to me and decided I was a burden. They said they didn't have time to take care of me and that it would be better for me to go to a nursing home. At first, I thought that was the best option, but once I got there, I realized I had been left behind. They never came to visit me again. They never called. It was like I had died to them." The millionaire felt a pain in his heart. He knew many stories about neglect, but hearing it from Helena was different. "One day, I simply couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my few belongings and ran away. I'd rather live on the streets than spend the last years of my life forgotten in a place where no one wants me." She lowered her head, holding back tears. "Ever since then, I've been living like this. Some nights I find a place to sleep, and other nights I'm on the sidewalk. I have health issues and feel pain all the time, but no one cares. I just wanted a bit of dignity. I just wanted to eat." The millionaire closed his eyes for a moment, trying to process everything he had heard. How can someone neglect their own mother like that? How can the world be so cruel? He knew he couldn't change Helena's past, but in that moment, he made a decision that would change the future. "Helena, here we go again. But this time, it wasn't just an old woman without a home. He saw a woman who had been forgotten by those closest to her. A woman who had fought to stay alive, even when the world turned its back on her. He reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. But before handing her any money, he bent down to her level and asked, "Ma'am Helena, if you could have a fresh start, a new life, would you take it?" The old woman was taken aback for a moment. She thought she had misheard. No one had ever asked her that before. A new life? What does that mean, son? Her voice came out weak, as if she was scared to believe it. The millionaire smiled gently and replied, "Helping you isn't just about $1 or a meal. I want to get you out of this situation, but I need to know if you're ready to accept my help." Tears that Helena had been holding back started to fall on her wrinkled face. She put a hand on her chest as her heart raced. No one has ever offered me anything like this before. No one has really wanted to help me, she thought. But today, that's going to change. Without hesitation, he reached out to her and said, "Come with me. From now on, you'll never have to ask for money on the street again." Helena looked at his outstretched hand in disbelief, as if it were all too good to be true. God was giving her a second chance through this man. With trembling hands, she took his hand, and in that moment, her life started to change. The millionaire helped Helena up carefully. Her steps were slow, and her fragile body showed the weight of years of neglect and suffering. He led her to his car, a fancy ride that felt like a world away from what she was used to. "Do you trust me?" he asked as he opened the door for her. Helena looked at him with tear-filled eyes, hesitated for a moment, then replied with a shy smile, "Son, I've lost hope, but something in your eyes makes me believe my life could change." The millionaire smiled and helped the old woman into the car. Their first stop was a restaurant. They sat down, and the waiter came over to the table. "Ms. Helena, order whatever you want today. You're going to eat well." She looked at the menu like it was a treasure. It had been forever since she had something hot and delicious. She felt a bit shy about ordering juice. But when the food arrived, she grabbed her utensils and closed her eyes for a moment. "Thank you, God. I thought I was going to die without tasting this flavor again." After the meal, the millionaire took Helena to a private clinic. The doctors examined her closely and confirmed what they suspected. She was suffering from malnutrition and had some health issues that needed treatment. She required ongoing care, but with good nutrition and follow-up, she could regain a lot of her health, as the doctor explained. The millionaire made a decision. Helena would not return to the streets. He got her new clothes and took her to a nice hotel. For the first time in many years, Helena slept in a warm bed, without fear, hunger, or the heavy loneliness that had crushed her. While she was sleeping, the millionaire was already planning his next move. He didn't just want to help her for a day. He wanted to change her life forever. In the following days, he closely monitored Helena's progress, hiring specialists to take care of her, doctors, nurses, and even a social worker to help her regain the confidence and dignity she had lost over the years. The period caught him off guard with her strength. Despite everything she faced, Helena still held on to a spark of hope and a desire to start over, something he never expected to find in someone society had forgotten. Helena began to physically recover, and her confidence started to grow. She found a decent place to live, a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood where she could take care of herself and her health. But the millionaire didn't stop there. He knew that for Helena to truly live a new life, he had to make things right for her. The first step was to confront her kids. He pinpointed their location and, with a calculated chill, called them together. He told them she was okay and that he was taking care of her. "It's tough right now, but I want you to understand that you walked away from her in a really harsh way." Helena's kids stayed quiet. Some tried to justify their actions, but the millionaire wouldn't let them off the hook. He was firm, insisting they admit the mistake they made, and more importantly, take responsibility for abandoning their mom. He wanted them to realize that by neglecting Helena, they lost their chance to be part of her life. In the end, Helena didn't need them anymore. She felt stronger and more independent, and even though it was impossible to erase the past, she knew she could build her future on her own terms. The millionaire, who had become an important figure in her life, visited her regularly. He brought her flowers and every now and then a book to read. They weren't just a stranger and a needy woman anymore. They became friends. And so, the story of Helena, the elderly homeless woman who once asked for $1, turned into an example of kindness and transformation. She went from being someone cast aside by society to someone who, with a little help and kindness, found not just a new home, but a whole new life. Her story inspired many others to look around and realize that sometimes a simple act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Helena, who once saw herself as lost and hopeless, found a new direction. She lived her days with dignity, surrounded by people who cared about her, and it all started with simple requests. Could I please have $1?